To make this necklace, we're using a selection of beads. We've got some round beads that are gold. These are 4 millimeters in size. Then we have some freshwater pearls that are rice shaped. We also have some pretty aqua faceted rondelles that are 4 by 6 millimeters. And then we have a gorgeous pearl and rhinestone connector. It's 19 millimeters in size. We are putting it all together with bead stringing wire. It's 7-strand bead stringing wire, and it's gold. Then we've got some findings here. We've got a gold headpin, a gold jump ring that's 3 millimeters, 2 gold wire guardians, 2 gold crimp covers. We have crimp beads. We're going to use 2 of these. These are size number 1. And then we have a lobster clasp that comes with a jump ring. For tools, we're using chain nose pliers, round nose pliers, and wire cutters. To get started, we're going to turn our connector into a pretty pendant. To do that, we're going to add a little bead dangle at the bottom. To make our bead dangle, we're going to start with a headpin and slide on our aqua faceted rondelle. And then we're going to make a wrapped loop. And to do that, we're going to use round nose pliers, and we're going to grasp the wire of the headpin right above the bead and bend the wire 90 degrees. And I'm bending the wire 90 degrees toward me, like that. Then I'm going to reposition the pliers so they're at the top of that bend. And I'm going to wrap the wire up and over the top jaw of the round nose pliers like that. And what that does is make a partial loop. I'm going to reposition the pliers so the bottom jaw is in the loop. And then I'm going to finish pulling the wire around to make a nice little circle loop there. There's our little circle loop. But now, normally I would go ahead and wrap the tail of this wire around the neck to wrap the loop, but I want to connect it to one of the loops in the bottom of our connector, or in either of the loops of our connector. So I'm just going to nestle that down in there, like that. And now I want to wrap this loop, and that'll keep this dangle connected nice and perfectly. So to wrap the loop, I'm going to grasp across the loop with my round nose pliers, and I'm going to pull the tail of the headpin wire around the neck 2 times, just like that. So now you can see it's nice and wrapped. Now I'm going to use my wire cutters to trim the end, and I'm going to position this so that I can get in there a little better. There we go. And I'm using the flush side of my wire cutters against my work and cut that. And I've got a little bit of a tail sticking out there, so I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to press that tail down. This can be a little tricky because it wants to rotate on me, so I'm going to hold onto the loop like that and then press the tail down. And that's just a little trick, like that. So now we've got our little bead dangle attached to our pendant. Looks pretty already. But to connect our pendant to the necklace, we need an extra jump ring at the top. We need the jump ring to make it hang right. If we slid this necklace or the pendant onto our necklace, it would hang sideways. So we're going to add a jump ring to the top. To open the jump ring, we're going to use 2 pliers. Whoops. And we're going to grab one side of the jump ring with one set of pliers just to the right of where the jump ring opens. And I'm using my second pliers on the other side of that opening. And I'm going to rotate one set of pliers down and rotate the other up. And what that does is keep the round shape of the jump ring. Now I'm just going to slide that through the loop. And I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to close the jump ring now. One of the nice things about opening a jump ring properly like that is it keeps a round shape, and then you can just sort of cheat and use your chain nose pliers to just press it back together, and it'll go right back together where it should be. And now we have a pretty pendant that's ready for our necklace, and we can start beading. To make the necklace, the first thing you want to do is cut a piece of bead stringing wire that's 24 inches long. And we're going to find the middle of our bead stringing wire just by folding it in half and finding the center. And then we're going to place a bead bug on the center. A bead bug is just a little clamp that you could buy at a bead store or online, and it just will hold the beads in place so they don't slide off. If you don't have a bead bug, you can just put a piece of masking tape there. And what we're going to do is slide on the pendant, and this way the pendant will sit sort of at the center of our bead stringing wire, and then we can bead either side of the necklace, and the bead bug will just keep everything from sliding off. So for this design, we've got our 3 different bead types here, and we're going to start with these beautiful turquoise beads. The turquoise beads are the faceted rondelles, and we chose these to go first because they're going to sit closest to the pendant. We're going to start with 2 of our faceted crystals, and then we're going to slide on 3 of our rice-shaped freshwater pearls. And that's going to be our pattern, is to go back and forth between our different bead types. I'm going to slide that down. That's 2. Let me do 1 more of our freshwater pearls. And now we're going to slide on 2 more of our turquoise beads. Followed by 3 of our gold beads. And you'll start to see the pattern emerge here. Slide that down. So you can see our pattern here is 2 of the turquoise beads, 3 pearls, 2 turquoise beads, 3 gold beads, and now we'll do 2 turquoise beads again. And then we'll just repeat our pattern. And we're going to do this until we have about 8.5 inches on this one side, and then repeat the pattern on the other side. I repeated the pattern on the other side of the necklace, and I've realized now that I'm at the end that I only have 1 turquoise bead left because we used the other turquoise bead at the bottom of our pendant. This is a classic beading error, but it's an easy fix. What we're going to do is I'm going to set this down very carefully so that my beads don't slide off. I'm going to go back to the other side of my necklace, remove the bead bug, and I'm going to slide off my 3 gold beads and 1 of the turquoise beads. And then I'm going to slide the 3 gold beads back on, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side so that the pattern matches. And because it's the back of the necklace where we only have the 1 turquoise bead at the end, it really won't show, and also it kind of looks like a design decision because it's only at the end where the clasp is, and often necklaces change as they get down to the end. So it'll look like that now, and I'm going to repeat that on this side of the necklace. And now our 2 sides match, and if you never tell anybody, they'll never know. They'll think it was a design decision that you made on your own, and you can always use your extra bead that's left over for another pendant. We finished beading both sides of our necklace, and now we're ready to put on the clasp. And to do that, we're going to start with one end and remove our bead bug or masking tape if you use masking tape to keep the beads from sliding off. We're going to slide on a crimp bead, and a crimp bead is basically a piece of metal, or a metal bead really, that's meant to be flattened. You can see it's teeny tiny. And I'm just going to let that slide down to where my beads are. And then I'm going to slide on a wire guardian. And a wire guardian, I'll show you what this is. It's like a little horseshoe that has openings on either end. And what it does is it protects the wire from breakage, essentially. The clasp could wrap around on this bead stringing wire, and it could wear over time. So this will protect that. So what I'm doing is sliding the bead stringing wire up through one side of my wire guardian, and now I'm going to slide it down the other side. There's like a little channel that the wire fits through, like that. And I'll pull that down. So now my wire is protected in there. And now I want to slide on my lobster clasp. So I'm just going to take the loop of my lobster clasp and feed it onto the wire and then nestle it up into that horseshoe of my wire guardian. And now I'm going to take my bead stringing wire, the end, and I'm going to slide it through that crimp bead and through one of the beads. And that's so when I cut the wire, it'll get hidden by that bead. And then I'm going to slide this up to where my wire guardian is because I want that crimp bead pretty close to where the wire guardian is so it holds it in place. I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm going to reach in and just flatten that crimp bead, or crimp it. Really, I'm flattening it more than crimping it. And now that crimp bead flattens and it will stay in place. And now what I can do is see where that wire is coming through my first bead there. I'm going to use my wire cutters and I'm going to cut that wire, and I'm going to make sure not to cut the wire that I've beaded because that would be a real drag after all that work. And so that's my first end on there, and the beads are going to hide where I've cut that end. And now what I can do is slide all my beads down to that end, take off my bead bug or masking tape from the other side, make sure I don't have any slack in my necklace. And I don't, that's great. And I'm going to do the same technique to finish the other end. So to do that, I'm going to take my crimp bead and slide it on first. And then I'm going to slide on my wire guardian. So to do that, I'm feeding my bead stringing wire up through the channel on one side of the little horseshoe, like that. And then I'm going to pull it around, and I want it to go down by my crimp bead for this end because we don't want any slack in our necklace. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it now to make it easier. Slide the bead stringing wire through the other side of my horseshoe, like that. And now I want to, before I feed it through the crimp bead, I'm going to feed on my jump ring. And this jump ring is essentially the other side of the clasp. And it came with that lobster clasp. And I'm going to nestle that into the horseshoe of my wire guardian, just like I did with the lobster clasp. And now this is where this gets a little bit tricky. You want to work in a pretty tight little area here because you don't want a bunch of slack or empty wire in your necklace when you're done. So pull your bead stringing wire down so that your wire guardian is pretty close to that crimp bead. And then take the end of your bead stringing wire and feed it through. See if I can do this so you can see it. Feed it down into that crimp bead like we did on the other side and through the first bead. And actually it's going through two beads. I might just let it do that because it's going to be easier. If it's naturally going through two beads, go ahead and go with it. It doesn't really matter. It's just going to get hidden in there. And I'm going to pull on my wire a little bit so that I don't have a lot of slack in there. And then before I trim the wire, I want to flatten my crimp bead. So I'm using my chain nose pliers again, and I'm just going to reach in with the tip because I don't have a lot of room here, and flatten my crimp bead like that. And now I'll trim the end of my wire with my wire cutters, and then I'm just going to jiggle this to hide that wire in my bead there. And now you can see that that just is all nice and lined up, but it's not super tidy seeing that crimp bead. So we're going to show you a little trick to make this look more professional, more finished. We're going to use crimp bead covers to cover our crimp beads. A crimp bead cover is like a little metal clam that when you close it over the crimp bead, it will end up looking like one of the other beads. So I'm going to hold it in my fingers like that. Take the end of my necklace, and I'm going to nestle that crimp bead down in my crimp bead cover like that. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm going to gently flatten or close the clam over that crimp bead. And I don't want to press it too hard because I don't want my pliers to mar the little bead because it's hollow. And you can see it ends up looking like one of the other beads. So it really makes it look nice and finished. I'm going to do that on the other side of my necklace. Grab my crimp bead cover And I like just holding it with my fingers like that, but you can use a tool if that's easier. You could hold it in a separate set of pliers. I'm going to nestle my crimp bead in there, and then I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to gently flatten or close, gently close that clam over the crimp bead. So that looks nice and finished. And now I can just close my clasp or connect my clasp. And I've got a beautiful beaded necklace with this gorgeous pearl and rhinestone pendant.